Part 2 of Edward VII. Edward was facing a crisis when in 1864, Lady Susan Vane-Tempest's husband died. She was full of grief and she turned to Edward's arms. After a few years of dating, one of Susan's closest friends wrote to him in 1871, stating that the crisis was due within 2 or 3 months. This was not a very well under-wrapped secret of the pair, and this is one of many credible sources of Edward's secret love children, whom he never acknowledged. Please continue to support my channel by subscribing. Sadly, this particular story had a tragic ending. This pregnancy and the consequential child were kept a secret by Susan until the very end. She gave birth in 1871, but the fate of this child is unknown. It is unknown whether she was forced to keep the secret or that she chose to. But when she passed in 1875, at only 36 years old, she had kept it all to herself. Lady Susan and her child were just a sad footnote on the long list of Edward's conquests. But while Edward's affair with the Lady Vane-Tempest ended tragically, it stayed almost entirely out of the papers. But we can't say that about his next affair. His many affairs got him into hot water on many occasions, and he was then caught up in a divorce scandal. His mother's view on him was not improved by the scandal of 1869, whereby Sir Charles Mordaunt, a member of Parliament, planned to divorce his wife. Divorcing your wife is nothing special, but this differed because this begrudged man was sick of his wife's antics, and he was willing to name Bertie in his divorce suit as a contributing factor, putting the blame on the future King of England. His affair left evidence behind in the form of steamy letters that he had written, and Sir Charles had discovered these for the ultimate showdown. He went snooping on his wife's private writing desk, and he found many pages of letters from the Prince of Wales. Edward had mostly managed to keep his affairs private, but for some reason he couldn't resist writing love letters to his mistresses. The letters were not full proof of their affair, despite being very saucy and damning. What he discovered next was all the proof he needed, because the mistress's husband caught him in their house. He came home early one day, only to discover the pair together alone in the house, although they were not caught in the act as it would have been suggested by the Victorian gossip, which had over-exaggerated the situation. Finding a man and a woman alone together was about as scandalous as it gets, and so their guilt was sealed. Her husband was rightly absolutely fuming, which is to be expected upon realising that your wife is having an affair with a powerful heir of the UK. Most people would say his reaction went too far, as his rage turned dark. After he found his wife in a clink with the Prince of Wales, he ordered him home in anger, but rather than take the time to cool off, he escalated his anger when he took his wife into the garden and shot 2 white ponies in front of her. Despite keeping his affairs on the down low normally, he could not avoid it with this one. The prince's reputation took a tumble, and despite Edward not being named as a co-respondent in his divorce, he was already proven to be the cause of the marriage breakdown. Edward had taken a battering to his reputation, but it was nothing compared to the consequences that his mistress faced at the end of the affair, and her fate was much darker. As a woman put on trial, they did not face a fair trial. The defence argued hysteria from her part, and her own lawyers claimed insanity as a defence for her adultery. To admit to insanity, her life was destroyed forever. Her ex-husband, as the man, could continue his life travelling around Europe and sleeping with as many women as he desired, while she was kept in hiding for the rest of her life, hidden from sight in a series of private cottages. She was eventually sent to live out her final days in a lunatic asylum, where she passed away in secrecy. Many of the women tangled went on to meet sad fates, and in 1871, Edward himself nearly did too, when he was caught up in danger. Despite being caught up in many scandals, the public loved him, perhaps due to his relatability, or because he provided many an entertaining story. The scandals were piling high, and with charisma and popularity, and after his brush with the same dangerous illness as his father was rumoured to die from, they only loved him more. In 1871, Edward caught typhoid fever. He was able to cling to life, unlike some of the guests that he was staying with, while the country waited with anticipation. He was one of the lucky ones, and he survived the typhoid fever, and people of England rejoiced all over the country. He may have been a handful, but he was still beloved by the public. The country didn't need another tragedy, and losing him so young. The public believed he was a kind soul despite his scandals, because he always treated everybody with respect, no matter their class or colour. Some of his letters revealed that he was disgusted by the racism in India on a trip that he took. He remarked, because a man has a black face and a different religion from our own, there was no reason why he should be treated as a brute. Back then, racism was rife, and so his remarks were completely against the grain, and he was well ahead of others of his class. It's easy to write Edward off as a ladies' man, but there was actually a lot more to him than met the eye, because he accepted everybody. The man had many affairs, and he was an avid gambler, but due to the anti-Semitism at the time, the public believed that he had crossed the line when he started fraternising with the Jewish Rothschild family. As a Prince of Wales, though he was not fazed by others' opinions, and he would do what he felt was right, when he felt it was right. Ahead of his time in more ways than one, he was also a fashion icon in his own right, because he always knew how to dress the part. Edward shaped men's fashion all across Europe, and it didn't take long for men all over the continent to begin imitating his style. He wore tweed suits, Homburg hats, or Norfolk jackets, as well as inspiring the black tie events that we have today. The standard dress for men at evening events was white ties and tails, but Edward again went against the grain and began to wear a simple black tie. The tradition has stuck to this day, and that's not even Edward's biggest contribution to the world of men's fashion. Edward was a large man, and so he could not, or he refused to do the button of his waistcoat or suit, jacket up. This tradition is still continued to be practiced today by men all over the world. Edward was the ultimate womanizer, and so his appearance was important to him, and he had a lot of married women to chase. If you thought we were done with Edward's affairs, you're sorely mistaken. We're just getting started. You would have thought Edward would have learnt from his previous affair, and despite keeping his antics out of the papers for a few years after the Mordaunt scandal, he was starting to cause a stir once again. He was attending the theatre when a young actress caught his eye in 1877. Her name was Lillie Langtry, and he started his chase to get her. She was also married, but Edward was unfazed by this fact. What followed would prove to be one of the most intense affairs of Edward's life, and her husband never became a problem as it did before. Edward was able to pull all of the right strings, and he managed to get his seat right next to Langtry at the dinner party they both attended. It was custom for the host to seat her husband at the complete opposite end of the table. The pair hit it off immediately, and she could not resist his charm, and it didn't take long before they ended up in bed together. The couple became the new gossip in Victorian London, The Queen's son caught up in a scandalous affair with a married famous actress. The affair continued for 3 years but came to an abrupt end when she ended up getting pregnant. He ended the sexual relationship between the pair, but they did continue to have a strong friendship for years to come. Historians believe that he was not the father and that she had also been playing the field with many other men at the same time. Despite the romantic end to their affair, Edward did continue to support Lillie financially for years. Most people who knew of Edward knew he was a decent and kind man, but his mother did not agree, and she was hugely disappointed in him. As the heir to the throne, he should have been busy. His schedule should have been full to the brim. But his mother pushed him out. She didn't want him to have any part of the formal royal role that he was deserving of, and so he used his spare time to womanize women instead. Victoria thought her son was a complete and abject failure, and she didn't trust him to take part in any matters of state. He was only involved in very few public appearances, and so he used his time to get involved in many interesting things. One of his dubious hobbies was to party in Paris and throughout the 1880s and 90s. Edward didn't spend that much time in England. Perhaps this was due to his mother, who struggled to even look at him. Edward wanted an escape, and he found it in the Parisian underworld, where he soon became something of a legend. Join me to discover how his life in Paris panned out, and if you thought Edward's English affairs were crazy, just wait till you hear what he got up to in the City of Love. Please continue to support my channel by subscribing. Please comment, like and subscribe if you wish for more stories, and leave your suggestions below and I will endeavour to cover them.